see the screen?
I can see the screen just fine.
Okay,
Okay,
perfect.
so as you can see on the screen, the title is called "An Improbable Path," a black man in nuclear power, and that may seem obvious. It may not seem obvious, but there are not a lot of African American males or females, or even minorities of of any distinction, actually in nuclear power. Um, and the reason why I titled it improbable, if you look at the definition of what improbable means, it means unlikely to be true or to occur. And so, having said that, this is my path, and that's what I'm going to talk to you about. My path, my story throughout my career. And I always tell people, don't do it like I did it. Do take the examples of the hard work and the perseverance. Um, and also, I need to share with you one of the main things that, and I don't know if this is appropriate or not for the message or not, but it's appropriate in my life. I believe in God, and I believe that God will move all of heaven and all of earth for me. And in my life, I've actually seen that happen. So if we could go to the next slide. What's the point? What's the point of this whole thing? Well, the point of this is I have four things that I want to talk about and make sure that are clear as I talk about my life and my journey. I want to make sure that you get the main points that got me moving. As you can see on the screen, it's your vision. Constantly reinvent yourself, take the job and live your truth. These are not just platitudes that I put out here for you. They're literally words I live by every day. And if there were people in my life other than Angela on the phone and my wife who is on the phone, God bless her for being so patient and loving me, um, then you would know that this is true in my life. What you see here on the screen is actually a picture of Arkansas Nuclear One, located in Russellville, Arkansas. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. But I want to make sure you got that. Now, while I talk about this journey, feel free to ask questions in the middle, in the end, the chat. You can't throw me off. You can't upset me. I want you to be engaged as much as you want to be engaged. Next slide. So the beginning of my story starts with my inspiration. And who is that? Well, that's my mother and father, James and Deborah Parham. And throughout this, you'll hear me refer to them a lot as people who've given me inspiration and guidance, and their words have literally guided me. I've been blessed among a whole lot of people to have actually two parents who loved each other. They they were married for 46 and a half years until my father passed on, and then not long after that, my mother passed on. But they were perfect parents, not people, parents, in that they guided me and gave me what I needed to continue on my journey. Um, my father has many phrases and sayings. One of them is that you only ever have to ask yourself two questions. Those questions are, what do you want? And what are you willing to do to make it happen? And if the answer to number two isn't anything and everything, then you don't really want it. And he was real simple and real clear about that. You know, being a country boy from Alabama, he had a lot of country boy sayings, but I took them and applied them to my life and used them to go forward. My mother was very demanding, and she demanded excellence. And I mean that in a positive way. She was loving. She was even cuddly sometimes, but she was very demanding and demanded excellence. And I remember when I left home, she gave me this that would stay with me for the rest of my life. She said, "You can go." They say that you can go around the world on personality alone. She said, "Son, you got personality." I took that to heart, and that's probably one of the best compliments I ever got. I don't believe in reinventing the wheel. I'm okay with inventing a new thing, but the wheel already exists. Maybe I can make the wheel better, but I'm not reinventing it. And so I'm saying all this to say that most of this isn't from me. This is just me taking what I've gotten and giving it to you. Lessons and sayings I've cultivated it into who I am. And these are the lessons. Uh, Next slide. Number one, it's your vision. Now on the screen, you see two little boys. One on the left is me and the other one is my baby brother. And this is where we all start at some point or another as little kids with a dream and a vision. And if you've ever seen kids, they're excited, they're happy, they want things that seem to be impossible. But that's where our dreams begin. And I would encourage you to hold on to that innocent dream and fulfill it. Next step. Next slide. The question is how smart do you have to be to communicate your vision to the rest of the world? I say that's not even the right question, because based on whose criteria do you have to be smart? You are the only you that has ever existed. And this is the only time, and there's never been a time like this before that's existed. And so I took all that and said, well, what are you supposed to do with that? Well, follow your vision. And that's something, again, my parents gave me. I'm giving you all of this background to tell you about the rest of this improbable story. Next slide. Rutgers University. Here's a young 19-year-old James Parham standing outside. You can't tell, but he's hungry. He's broke. He's overwhelmed with school, but he's out looking for a job. And this is where it all began. And the problem is with that is, while I had gotten accepted to Rutgers University and had good grades in order to get in, I didn't have any money to afford to go there. My parents didn't have any money to afford for me to go there. So I spent a lot of time taking a semester on, taking a semester off, trying to pay for school, trying to work, trying to survive. And it just got to be too much. And so now I'm faced with the question, like now I'm 21 years old and I've been trying to go to school and trying to make money and earn and feed myself. And it's just not working. This is not a winning proposition. What am I supposed to do? Well, it's simple. You come up with another plan. You don't just quit. You don't just lie down. You don't just lay there. Because my vision at the time was, what I was supposed to do is I was supposed to get a job after I got my science degree. So get a job in science, change the world, and then do what everybody else does at that point, become rich and famous. I was not on a track to do that because I couldn't afford to pay for school. And there were naysayers all along the way who'd say things like, well, maybe you shouldn't be in school. Maybe you're not smart enough. Maybe you're not bright enough. Maybe you should have got a scholarship. Maybe. But that wasn't my vision. And I refused to listen to that and refused to listen to them tell me about what I could and could not do. Next slide. So what did I do? Surprise, surprise, the military, the United States Navy. One day I was sitting in my apartment and I wasn't in school because I was still trying to pay for last semester's bills, because, you know, if you don't pay for last semester's bills, they won't let you start the next semester. So I'm paying for that. I'm in my apartment, and what do I see but a commercial that comes on? It says, "You in the Navy, full speed ahead." Now, I'm a science guy. I'm a science kid. And they talked about this engineering program, and it was supposed to be the best in the world, and only the brightest in the world in the country got to go into it. Well, what is it? All right, let's go down there and check it out. I went down to the recruiter's office, and they introduced me to the Naval Nuclear Power Training idea at the Navy's facility in Orlando, Florida. They talked about it. They were like, "Oh my God, you'd be great." What they didn't tell me was everything else that's on the screen, which is that it had an 85% attrition rate at the time that I began, which means out of 100 people who start, only 15 finish. Now, that wouldn't have actually deterred me. That would have actually excited me. It got me excited because, you know, like John F. Kennedy once said, you know, when he was talking about going to the moons, we do these things not because they are easy, but because they are hard. I was that kid who always wanted a challenge. I always wanted to overcome. You couldn't tell me I couldn't do something. So 85% attrition rate. They also didn't tell me that it was Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 4, test on Friday, every Friday. Sometimes on the stuff that you learned Friday morning, you got tested on Friday afternoon. And if you couldn't hack it, well, it was real simple. They kicked you out of the program. And if you got kicked out of the nuclear program, well, then you went to the fleet as an undesignated sailor, which meant that you could literally be chipping paint for the next 4 years. So that, again, was not an option. What do? Well, we do something that my dad talked about. And my dad always said, he said very simply, he said, look, hard work beats smart when smart won't work hard. And he also said, you won't outwork me. So I took on that lesson. So we began ETA school, which means electronics technician school. That's 6 months of, again, Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 4, test on Friday, nothing but electronics. High-powered, low-powered electronics. After you finish A school, then you go to nuclear power school. Nuclear power school is 6 months of nuclear reactor physics, nuclear reactor theory, mathematics, chemistry, materials, and everything associated with heating of HVAC, the cooling cycle, anything engineering you can think of, that's what it is. And oh, by the way, I didn't mention this, but the minimum GPA required is a 2.8. If you have a 2.79999 infinity, they will boot you out of school. Back to what I talked about, potentially chip and paint on a submarine or ship for the next 4 years. So again, minimum 2.8 GPA. And again, we're not talking, basket weaving. I said nuclear physics, nuclear reactor theory, thermodynamics, calculus, the fill in the blank engineering. After you finish after you finish power school, then you go to prototype. And a nuclear prototype is just that. It is an actual operating nuclear powered either submarine or ship, but land-based, and it's at a training command in some other place so that they can learn whether or not you can actually qualify to operate a nuclear power plant. Because just because you finished those schools before, okay, fine, you've got the academics. Can you actually do the job? Because if you can't, again, back to chip and paint on a ship for the next 4 years. After prototype, obviously I finished. And in my graduating class, there were 303 people. And only 2 of us were African American. I'm going to say that again, just in case you missed it the first time. There were 303 people in my graduating class, and 2 were African American. It is unlikely, just by the virtue of the number of us, that we should have succeeded in this program. 2 out of 303. All right, whatever. Fine, finish training. Now what? Well, there's only one thing. I go back to something my father said. What do you want? What are you willing to do to make it happen? Well, I don't know yet. We'll figure it out. Figure it out before you take your next move. And that's something we'll talk about here in another minute. Next slide. Constantly reinvent yourself is not new. It's not something that you haven't heard before. It's been said in a bunch of different ways. But again, it's something my mother and my father gave me. What you're actually looking at right now is a picture of the USS Billfish. It's a Navy nuclear submarine, and it's broken through the ice up at the North Pole. On the screen, you can see this black thing sitting up there. That's actually called the sail. And the little things that look like triangles next to it are called the fairwater planes. And the fairwater planes are pointed up so that as you break through the ice, they kind of act as knives helping you break through. And that's actually the crew out at the North Pole on top of the ice, on top of the nuclear submarine, walking around, taking measurements and doing whatever else it is that the Navy does, which, well, if I told you, I'd have to kill you. Just jokes, just jokes. Again, improbable, unlikely to be true or actually occur. So next slide. What got you here won't keep you here. Now, what you see on the screen is below is an actual mock-up of the control room on the nuclear powered submarine. All the way to the left, you'll see a wheel. That wheel is what we call the throttle. It actually controls steam flow through the main turbines to actually propel the ship forward by turning the rudder, and the screw in the back of the boat, or the propeller. In the middle is a panel called the reactor plant control panel. And to the right is a plant called the electric plant control panel. Now, each one of those stations requires a minimum of 6 to 12 months to qualify to operate, because every switch, every dial, every control needs to be known like it's the back of your hand. You need to know how the instruments fail in case there's a problem. You need to know what the light means when it comes on. You need to know which way to turn the knob. What are we doing with the electric plant? This is where all the power in the submarine or the ship comes from. And so the people that are qualified this are the people who went through what I just talked about, which is the power program. They went to A school where they learned minimum skill. Then they went to power school, nuclear power school, where they learned to be specific in understanding the theory and the physics behind what they do. Then they went to prototype to learn how to actually operate this equipment. Because when you're 400 feet underneath the water, you can't call a repairman. You are the repairman. You are the operator. You are the guy who is the most knowledgeable person in the room on your specific piece of equipment. And that is why all along they tell you, if you fail out, if you can't make the grade, if you can't maintain your average, we will boot you out of the program. Because think about this. You got a guy who's operating a nuclear power plant on a submarine with a 2.0 GPA. Nobody's comfortable with that. So he's got a C. He's got a C average. That's the guy who's operating the nuclear power plant. That's the guy with the C. Now, you must have at least a 2.8. And they don't really like that, but they had to come up with some standard because it's a long time. So 2.8. Just FYI, so we're clear. I had a 3.5 GPA. That's neither here nor there. Top right is actually a picture of me standing topside of the nuclear submarine in my diving gear, because when I got to the boat, one of the things I wanted to make sure I did was I qualified as a U.S. Navy diver. Now, in order to qualify U.S. Navy diver, there's a bunch of physical challenges you have to meet, which is fine. But the biggest hurdle, believe it or not, is the paperwork. Now, I'm not going to say that there were any racial motivations behind my my ascension to diver, but I will tell you that I put in 4 different requests under 4 different people, and all 4 were denied. It wasn't until we had to take our submarine over to the Mediterranean Sea and all of the other people who were qualified left the boat that I had an opportunity to go. Because 1, I stayed ready. I didn't have to get ready when the captain came on board and he's like, "Hey, Petty Officer Parham, I hear you want to go to dive school." I said, "Yes, sir, I do." "And when's the next exam?" I said, "The next exam is tomorrow morning, 7:30 up at the dive locker." "Okay, all right, well, let me know how that works out." "Yes, sir, I will." You can't get ready. You have to be ready. At least that's what I had learned. I wanted to do this, so I stayed ready. So 4 requests in, all 4 denied. I still don't have an approved request, but the captain said so, and Omni Domini, Ominous Dominus, I'm a U.S. Navy diver because I went to school and did what I always do, which is I kicked it into high gear. My thought is you should constantly be growing, changing, and evolving. As you come in connection with different people, situations, and obstacles, you should be absorbing these experiences and taking what's important and interesting to you and letting that mold you into the person that you want to be. Again, we talked about what the job of the reactor operator is literally ship's power. Without the reactor, nothing else works. And to break it down into really simple terms, the reactor basically is a big tea kettle that makes steam. The steam turns both the throttles to the left for the main turbine and powers the electricity for the electrical plants. And one of the things that we did when we were there was, in addition to qualifying and learning all these jobs, was we read constantly, because that's the only way to keep growing. Because what got you here, again, won't keep you here. Next slide. I almost let out the bag a little bit earlier, but my father, he used to always say, get all you can and can all you get. And when I was a kid, I didn't understand that. But what he was trying to say is get what it is that you can for your life, because it's your responsibility to do so. It's not anyone else's. They don't owe it to you. And when you get it, make the most of what it is that you get. He used to always say something else too. He said, you got to work with what you got, because you can't work with what you ain't. Now, again, countryisms, but there's wisdom in that. I don't have what you have. I have what I have. I have what I can get. I don't have anything else. And that's what I have to work with. What I had was a drive. I could work with that because, again, I know what my father said, which is hard work beats smart when smart won't work hard. And so what did I do? Underway, I did everything I could. I used underway time, which is time out to sea. I was out to sea on that nuclear submarine for 4 years. And every time I was out to sea, I spent time investing in myself for the future. Math and science and finance. One of the things I did, which I highlight over here, is as 20 years old, I'm a command financial counselor. The guys on board, they all call me Wall Street, because we would get the Wall Street Journal, and I would break down, and we would run imaginary drills for if you had this much money. You know, I'd give everybody $10,000, and I'd see who could race to get to $100,000 the quickest. You know, we would do that. And we didn't do it on apps because we didn't have apps back then. We did it on paper. And so, and that was a way of educating everybody to do that, because I wanted to bring everybody along with me. Some of the qualifications, some of the other qualifications, again, that get all you can and can all you get: reactor operator, senior reactor operator, electrical operator, U.S. Navy diver, dive supervisor, 3M maintenance coordinator. And if you don't know what the maintenance coordinator is, the maintenance coordinator is the guy who literally puts out the schedule for all of the maintenance that has to be done in any particular group at a time. And every piece of equipment that is on that submarine needs to have maintenance performed at some point. I qualified quality assurance petty officer. Countless medals and awards, not going to talk about them, blah, 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 whatever. I got everything that I could get while I was underway. And of course, there's always someone who will tell you that's enough. You don't need any more. And to them, I would say what my father said: get all you can and can all you get. Now, having said all of this, if you recall, we started this journey at Rutgers University. I did not finish Rutgers University. I've got all this qualification. I'm a qualified nuclear reactor operator, electrical operator. I'm command financial counselor. I'm reading books on finance and math. I do not have a college degree. They take 18-year-old kids into the Navy, and then 2 years later, at 20 years old, they're operating nuclear power plants, because their program is that tough, it's that hard, and they'll kick you out if you can't pass the muster. It's just that simple. I'd like to pause and see if there's any questions up till now that have come up, so that we don't have to wait till the end. If there are. Shamil?
Yeah, that's right, everybody. Please feel free to put your questions into the chat. I will be monitoring that for Mr. Parham, so I'll make sure to send over any questions that you have. Looks like we don't have any at the moment, but I'll make sure to let you know, Mr. Parham.
Okay. All right. Thanks. All right. So my time in the Navy had come to an end. I had done 6 years, and in that 6 years, I know that my transcript is
Trying to
full
raise my hand.
because I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I was trying to raise my hand. I didn't see the thing to raise my hand. I had a
Just reach
question.
out.
I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
When you mentioned that you were out 4 years, you did come back and forth? You did not mean that you were there for. I mean, it's like, what?
That is a fair question. That is a fair question. No, I was on a fast attack submarine for 4 years. That means I was assigned. That was my assigned duty station as a reactor operator. And what that means, as far as a fast attack submarine, their job is literally so we could load up today. We might be gone tonight, or we might be gone 6 months. We are there to provide immediate response anywhere in the world on very short notice. Now, the ballistic missile submarines, the boomers, they go out on patrols for 6 months at a time. Excuse me, 3 months at a time. They're 3 months out, 3 months back in, 3 months out, 3 months back in. But the fast attack submarines, they're the and by the way, the boomers don't actually stop at any ports. Fast attack submarines, we could be anywhere. We could be on the coast of someplace I can't say, or we could be on the coast of someplace I could say at any given time. And what the fast attack submarines also do is they actually patrol around with the fleet. There's a box, a three-dimensional box that the fleet is supposed to be in, but only the submarine can take advantage of all three dimensions because usually the ships that sink don't come back up unless they're a submarine. So we were kind of like their watchdog. You know, I tell everybody that submarine fighting is the only way to fight. You sneak up on somebody from behind, you hit them in the dark, and then you run away. If you see us, that's a problem. So to answer your original question, no, I was not out to sea for 4 years. I was assigned to the boat for 4 years. No, it's a fair question, and we went everywhere. I mean, literally, we went everywhere. You saw a picture of us at the North Pole. I'm one of the few people I know that has been to the North Pole. Does that answer your question? Awesome. Okay, so again, my time in the Navy is up. I have done my 6 full years, 2 years of school. Again, I cannot say this enough. Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 4, test on Friday. Oh, the only piece I did not mention was that in addition to the Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 4, we were in uniform every day. Our shoes needed to be shined. Our belts needed to be shined. Our gig lines, which is your belt line, your line on your buttons, and your zipper needed to be in line. Know what they call Irish pennants, which is their hanging threads from your uniforms. Your haircut needed to be right. You had to march in parade to lunch. You marched in parade to go into the building. So in addition to school, we had that. But it was actually a relief to not have to worry about what you're going to wear, what you're going to eat for me. All I had to do was go to school. For me, that was perfect. So my 6 years is up. Now what do I do? Well, next slide. You take the job. That's some advice I got from someone many years ago. He said, when you feel like it's beyond you, when you feel like you can't, when you feel like you shouldn't, if you have the opportunity, take the job. We'll talk about what that does a little bit later on in the presentation, but it does stretch you. If you're lucky, if they give you the opportunity, if someone sees something in you and they offer you the opportunity, take the job. So here, I have been in nuclear power in this picture for several years. And my brother, who is actually a former police chief in the town that we grew up in, was talking to a billionaire from UAE. And the billionaire says to him, I wish I knew somebody who knew something about nuclear power. And so my brother says, well, my brother does. And he goes, no, 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 no. I mean, really? He goes, no, no, no. My brother does. And so within an hour, I'm emailing back and forth with a billionaire from Abu Dhabi who, by the way, in case you don't know this, the guys wearing all whites, they're billionaires. they are billionaires, all of them. I'm talking to a billionaire who's saying, can you come over here and teach my national police force something about nuclear power because we don't know anything. Now, why is this important? Because at the time, the UAE, first of all, they're very forward thinking. And they know that they've got about 75 to 150 years left of oil and being on top. And so what they want to do is they're actually building nuclear power plants in the desert to provide them with power and learn and gaining the expertise from everywhere to teach their people how to do this so that they are not left behind. They are preparing for tomorrow, today, so that they are not surprised. So I went over for about 10 days with my own information that's in my head and prepared and taught them the basics of nuclear power and how to respond in an accident and anything else that they had questions about, because again, they did not know anything about it. Now, I don't know if you can see what's actually happening here, but these are all people of color. All of us. The expertise in the room is all people of color. Again, improbable, unlikely to occur. But the experts in the policing, in the nuclear knowledge, in, finance, because again, they're billionaires, we're all people of color. Improbable. Next slide. After I left the Navy, I was sitting at home and I got a phone call from Arkansas Nuclear One. Arkansas Nuclear One asked me to come out and do an interview, and I said, no, I'm not interested. And the guy said, why? I said, because you're in Arkansas. I'm from New Jersey. I'm not going to Arkansas. 2 days later, he calls back. He says, hey, man, come on, just consider it. I'm like, no, I don't want to go to Arkansas. The third time the guy calls, he's like, look. And then he got me. He said, look, I just don't want you to miss out on this opportunity. That's all he had to say. I was on a plane. I was out to Arkansas because I know that this was an opportunity that I might not have again. It's a once in a lifetime shot that I had turned down twice already. Thank God. I don't know, he smacked me in the back of my head or something, because I joined the operations group, which is the same group I was in the Navy. So it's basically the same job, but the boat was tied to the pier. So operations group, they're the ones who operate the nuclear reactor. They're the ones who go out and twist the valves and turn the knobs and the dials. They know how everything works. I asked the manager once, I said, what are we supposed to know in ops? And he said in one word, everything. Oh, okay. That doesn't leave any room for any doubt. What are you supposed to know? Everything. Okay, so I spent 8 years in operations learning everything. Every day was a new challenge. It was 2 years of qualifications and 5 years of operation. And again, every day was something new. But while I was in operations group, I decided to take advantage of another opportunity. Arkansas Nuclear One, between Arkansas Nuclear One and my home, was a college, a university. I didn't have a degree. So I decided, why not finish a degree? So I finished my 2 degrees. I picked up a nuclear engineering degree and an electrical engineering degree while I was working a 12-hour rotating shift at Arkansas Nuclear One in the operations group. When I graduated, I decided to join the design engineering group. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention, I also went to license class again to learn to get a license to operate the nuclear power plant, because that's what you're required to do in the civilian world. All right, I did that for now 9 years. What's next? Well, I was preparing for what's next when I got my degree, because without a degree, all of my knowledge is wonderful, but there's doors that aren't open. And so I needed that door open. So that's why I got my degree. And now I've got degree and I've got 9 years of operating experience and 1 year of design engineering experience. Well, GE's hiring. Well, let's see what they want. Oh, GE actually wants a pipe test director. I'm an electrical engineer. Take the job. They put me in charge of this pipe test group. What the pipe test group is we were building a nuclear power plant in Taiwan. And what happens is before the plant could actually start up, we put all the pipes in, and then we need to make sure that they only move a certain amount of X, Y, and Z position. Because if they move more than that, then they break and we have an accident, the kinds that we don't like to have in nuclear power. So they gave me a $20 million budget and as many people to work for me as I wanted to have work for me. So for the next several years, all I did was learn this job. And at the end of it, I had taken my $20 million, reduced the budget by $17 million with the stuff that I had learned both in the power plants and in the real world and at college, and got an award and recognized by GE for the #1 business value award. Again, I'm an electrical engineer who's working in nuclear power, who's a pipe test director, and I'm winning a business value award. Always take the job. All right. Well, while I'm at GE, you know what? There's something next. There's something that comes next. I don't know what it is. Let's see what it is. But in the meantime, why don't you go ahead and pick up that MBA from Howard? So I spent the next couple of years earning my MBA from Howard University. And then I got the job as a senior plant electrical systems engineer, which means that they handed me a blank piece of paper and said, go design the electric plant. Okay, got it. Let's do that. Now, unfortunately, GE did not last that long. I was there for 9 years, but I wanted it to last for another 9, maybe 20 years. There were politics involved, and the Taiwan government shut down the power plant, so that was the end of that contract. So now it's time to move on. Thank God I had already prepared for the next thing before that thing came along. Now, we'll talk about that in just a minute. Next slide. This is where I've been. I'll give you a chance to look around. Bunch of different countries. There's only a few states I haven't been in. And what I mean by been in, I mean spent substantial time working, living, or just traveling to on vacation. And I'm sure that I've missed some things because I didn't mention the oceans that I've been in. Angela, you look like you got a question. Okay.
I was looking for the countries that called me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So as Angela just talked about, as I was traveling around the world, I would either send her a postcard or call her from all of these different places because, you know, she's Mama Angela. She's big sister. She's, you know, it's who she was. And you can see a lot of them are listed. You know, people ask me, where's my favorite place? And it's easy. My favorite place of all these places I visited is Taiwan because they're friendly. They're nice. They're wonderful people. And they love Americans, which is not easy to do in most of the world. Next slide.
I don't see Panama. Okay.
I just wanted to, Yeah, I'll just briefly cover this. So one of these pictures, if you start all the way top left, that's my initial A school class, and you can see it's very, or it's not very diverse. Let's leave it at that. Bottom left, you can see the arrow pointing to number 6 on a line, pledging iota phi theta. Next to that one is that guy in Arkansas riding on his ATV. Next to that one is the group of people, the group of men and women who influenced me most in my life, my brothers, my mother, and my father. Above that is some 20-year-old kid who you couldn't tell him he wasn't cool that day in that scarf. Up above is my motorcycle, which I love. To the right, all the way top right corner is my Navy dive school picture. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard of David Goggins, but David Goggins is actually in the background of that picture. He's the Navy SEAL who wrote a book about you can't hurt me. We actually trained together. Down below that is me actually walking the Great Wall of China. And in the bottom right is me in my Boy Scout uniform. Next slide. So when GE went away, well, what's left? Next is the Defense Nuclear Facility Safety Board. I had actually cultivated a friend by the name of Dr. Ariel Miller, who actually suggested I look for this, I apply for this job. He immediately hired me, and this is where I am today. I'm actually talking to you from my office at the DNFSP right now. And FYI, when I was hired, they literally told me the only reason why they gave me the job was because I had the MBA, which I did not get. To get this job, I got it looking for the next thing, and the next thing found me. Next slide. Having said that, I say, live your truth. That's me and my church group, my former church group. And I loved playing with these guys. I played my guitar for probably since I was 5 years old. And that's probably one of the best times I ever had was playing with that group. It was called Sounds of Praise at our church. Next slide. Live your truth again. Goals. I've always had goals. And part of my goals were stretch goals. And that, as you can see, stretch goals are objectives that encourage you to complete a challenging task. I say that they're ones that feel like they're beyond your reach or out of your reach, that you literally have to grow in order to meet. If you're in a position, and I've always thought this about my life, if I was ever in a position where I was happy and content, that's not where I need to be. I need to continue to move on because I need to grow. I need to expand my current capability. And that's why there's this picture of your stretch. You should have some stretch goals. I mean, have some regular goals, but have some stretch goals that push you to the next level. I always have. Even now, I've got stretch goals that'll push me to the next level. They have to do with building an empire, but that's a conversation for another day. Next slide. And how I make my goals are smart. And I know that you guys have heard this before: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based. If they're not, then how do you measure your success? Because success must be planned, and your plans must have a beginning, middle, and an end. And you must be able to measure how successful you were in that. That's the way I've always done it. And it's always worked for me. Next slide. I realize we're running out of time. That's why I'm pushing at the end. My mother, God rest her soul, gave me this advice. When I was applying for grad school, I didn't really know how I was going to do it. It's like, oh my God, there's so much going on in my life and moving and traveling. And she told me, she said, there will be hard days ahead. Someone you know is going to get sick. Someone is going to die. You just have to make your mind up to get it done. What she was saying is very simple. And it's been true for my life, like I know it's been for yours, even though I don't know you. And that is that difficulties will always exist. It's your job to find a way through, around, over, or under, but get past it. Accomplish what you set out to do. Again, measure your success. It, and again, it must be planned. And some of them will be stretch goals. And again, all of these things all line up to keep us moving forward and to keep me moving forward. Let's see. Next slide. Having said that, you are always making choices. People say, well, I don't know. I don't know what I want to do. That's a choice. You're making a choice not to do something. That's a choice. You are always making a choice and headed in one direction or another. What you put out there is who you are. If you put out there, I am indecisive, well, then that's who you are. If you put out there, I am decisive, that's who you are. If you put out there, I do my study and my research, that's who you are. And if you're confused about where you want to go, ask yourself, what do you want your legacy to be when you arrive? When you look back and someone asks you, or excuse me, when they talk about you, when you're gone and when you're not around, what will they say about you? Well, you get to determine what that is by the choices that you make. My dad told me another thing. He said, every day you wake up, you choose who you're going to be for the rest of your life. So yesterday doesn't really matter. Make a choice today and walk in that because you are those choices. Next slide. This one is kind of cute, but it's my thought, right? The future is coming, whether you want it or not. And like I've said before, you can't get ready for the zombie apocalypse. You got to be ready for the zombie apocalypse, because if it's happening and you're not ready, well, you're a zombie. Next slide. That's all I got. I tried to make it in 50 minutes, and I think I did just fine. If you've got any questions, thank you for your time. Please feel free to ask.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Parham. So again, like he said, please feel free to ask any questions. I'm going to be monitoring the chat, and I'll relay the questions to Mr. Parham. It looks like we have one right now. Taufik, if I'm mispronouncing your name, I apologize. But they asked, I came a little late, so you might have mentioned this, but were you always initially interested in engineering and nuclear energy, or was this something you gained over time through continually seeking opportunities?
I love that question. When I first started college, as Dr. Robinson will tell you, I was pre-med. So there was science, but it was pre-med that I went in the direction of I wanted to do biology and then go to medical school or dental school. But that didn't materialize because of something as simple as I couldn't afford to go to school and eat at the same time. One of them had to give. So it literally was one of those, when I joined the Navy, they directed me towards, they said, well, this is sciencey, you do this science stuff. And I was like, okay, fine. I'm a smart guy. Let's figure out what this is. And that parlayed into another opportunity, into another opportunity, into another opportunity. And here I am 30 years later. It's been my whole life.
That's awesome. Thank you. And I think so many graduates in general can speak to that, right? You go into school for one thing, and now you're in a totally different field. I applied as a journalism major. I got an accounting degree, and now I'm in higher education. So listen,
Exactly.
just because that
Exactly.
piece of paper says one thing doesn't mean you can't be doing another. So please keep that in mind as well. Once
Let me
again,
speak on that.
yes, please.
Let me speak on that. So I got a question a couple of weeks ago about, whether or not I was actually working in my field, because I have my primary undergraduate degree was the electrical engineering. And I was like, well, you're not working in your field. Well, yes, I am. I am, because my field is broad. And the idea that I'm in power of any kind means that I'm making electricity or involved in electricity of any kind goes along with my degree. So even though I work for the Defense Nuclear Facility Safety Board, I still work in my field as a subject matter expert in electrical engineering.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so it looks like we don't have any questions remaining, so I think we can go ahead and wrap up. So I just want to say, Mr. Parham, thank you so much for your time, for your energy, for your presentation, and for letting us into your life a little bit and sharing all of your experiences. Dr. Robinson, thank you so much for facilitating all of this. And thank you to all of the students. We had a great turnout today. I think we have over 30 students here in the chat in the middle of the day, middle of the week. I know all of you are in between classes, just like Mr. Parham was in Rutgers, trying to get some food, trying to get here, trying to get there. So we appreciate all of you for showing out. Please shout out Mr. Parham in the chat. Let him know how you like the presentation. And we'll stick around for just a few more minutes before we close. So if anybody does have any questions, you can go ahead and enter that in the chat. But again, this session is recorded. We will have this video posted on our SAS EOF website. So just keep your eyes peeled out for that email. It'll most likely be coming from me once we have that up and ready. But with that being said, thank you all so much for your time. Mr. Parham, you're getting a lot of love in the chat.
I see that. Thank you all so much.
Oh, they're going fast. Okay. Oh, we have another question, actually. So you also mentioned you lived in New Jersey. What high school did you go to?
Linden High School. And let me tell you this, you know, my brothers and my friends that all went to Linden High School, we've been out here in the world and we've done a lot of different things. And we all say the same thing. I don't know what it's like today, but I can honestly say Linden High School gave me a fantastic primary education to take out in the rest of the world. And that can't be said for every high school that's out there. And I don't know if it was the teachers, it was the time, or it was the fact that we were actually engaged as students, but it was great. And it prepared me for everything that you saw in this presentation.
Awesome. Good to know. All right. Thank you to everyone in the chat. We appreciate you. We appreciate the kind words. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now.